Hello, my name's Tipper, and today we're going to talk about Appalachian language, some phrases and words. More specifically, we're going to talk about phrases and words that start with the letter K. And for reference, I'm using the Dictionary of Smoky Mountain English. So this very first one is really interesting one. It's one that I've never heard myself, so I'll be interested to know if you've heard it. So it's kale seed. Well, of course I've heard of kale seed. I love to grow kale. I grow kale every fall for sure, and a lot of times in the spring too, so I know what that is. But the dictionary says that kale seed was actually a noun, and they used it to refer to money, that it was money, which is really interesting. 1942, the Hall collection, Del Rio, Tennessee. I may come up to New York and see if I can get the kale seed. You know what that means. That was Wilford Metcalf. And then in 1967, just that it was documented that it meant money. He certainly got the kale seed, and that was in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I've never heard money called kale seed. So I'll be interested to know if you have. But now every time I plant kale, I'm going to think of that. I'm going to think about it being money. The next one is really common, so common to me that it's just like part of my life, almost part of who I am, and it's a katydid. So if you don't know what a katydid is, it's a cicada. So katydids in the summer, especially in the latter months of the summer here in southern Appalachia where I live, they are a chorus that you cannot miss hearing. Every night you hear them, the katydids. I've become so used to it that I don't notice them as much. I remember one time years ago, I was at a contra dance, and it was in the summer, and I stepped outside because it was so hot, and a gentleman was already out there, same ideal as I had, to get a little bit of breath of fresh air or wind stirring because it was so hot on the dance floor. And he said, "Is it always this loud here?" And I was like, huh? And then I realized he was hearing the katydids, something that I totally just didn't even register that I was hearing them, because I've heard them for so long. So he was really stunned by how loud they were. And they are loud, but again, to me, they speak of home. So an insect that sits in trees or bushes in hot weather and makes a sharp buzzing sound. And that was actually from Brasstown, North Carolina. So it was 1968. So still today, they're still doing that, still making that sharp buzzing sound in Brasstown for sure. This next one is interesting. It's a Keeler. I'm not familiar with this one either. So a Keeler, K-E-E-L-E-R, is a noun, and it's a small wooden tub. 1905, Miles, Spirit of Mountains, odd-looking utensils, these boat-like bowls of maple for the kneading of bread, piggins, and keelers of cedar, a wooden spurtle for stirring the evening kettle of mush, and a huge gritter on which green corn is grated for the making of roseneer bread. So that's someone describing the utensils in a mountain kitchen at that time in 1905. I've never heard roseneer bread. I've never heard it called that. What we would call it is gritted bread. Let's go all the way to 1944. Wilton Word List, a wooden tub-like vessel 5 or 6 inches deep and 18 or 20 inches in diameter, used to put milk or other warm liquids into to cool. So that's interesting. Keeler. I've never heard that one. So this next one is one that I am familiar with, and the dictionary has 2 different kind of usages, and I'm familiar with both of them. But the first one, it's keen, K-E-E-N, K-E-E-N, and that's to wail, to make that wailing sound, you know. So 1935, Shepherd, Cabins in Laurel, if the preacher harrows the sorrowing kinfolks with the promise of judgment and wrath to come until they break into wild keening that sends shivers through the listeners, it is only what might be expected in bereavement and likely to bring some sinner to his senses. So that was talking about the wailing that happens sometimes at church when someone's preaching really hits you where it's supposed to, I guess. 1971, Dictionary for Yankees, to wail or cry is what keen means. His daughter went to keening at the funeral. So you can see it's kind of in a sad, mournful way when you think of someone keening. Not just keening, the girl was keening over spilt milk. We would probably wouldn't say that. We would say bawling or squalling. So the next keen entry for the dictionary, keen, keening, or keeny, is an adjective, especially of the eyes, sharp and piercing. So let's see, 1883, all the way back there, Ziegler and Grosscup, heart of the Alleghenies. What I don't know about these mountains, said he, directing his keen blue eyes upon one member of the group, hain't of any profit to man or devil. So he knew a lot about the mountains, or what he didn't know. He knew so much that there wasn't much that he didn't know. That's what he was saying. 1940, Sims collection, feel that keening wind, it'll likely frost this night. 1952, just as children, he sighed as he gave a keen glance at his half-filled basket of berries. So when I hear the word keen, I think of it in two different ways. Well, three, also the welling, of course, but the eyes, like they're saying, I can just hear Pap describing someone and say, he had these keen, he turned those keen eyes over there on him. And said whatever he was going to say. But also, we would describe someone's voice as being keen. So if it's sharp, if it's high and really sharp, like a voice like that, we would say they have a keen voice, a keen voice. Of course, many of you, especially older folks, probably know what a keen hickory is, so that was something you didn't want to encounter as a child. But that one's still alive and well in my area of Appalachia. The next few in the dictionary are really interesting, and I really love, because I've heard Pap say most all of them, and that's the memories that I have of them. But it's kind of the prefix ker, K-E-R, ker, and it's added onto a verb to add intensity or strength. So in Appalachian language, we often do that. It's like the words we say, we want to emphasize them totally, as much as possible. So sometimes we add letters, sometimes we add other words to them. So this is the one where we would add the letters K-E-R, ker, just to make it more, emphasize it more, so you knew that we meant whatever it was really stout and strong, and we really meant it. So the first one is kerflummox. What a great word, kerflummox. 1861, lazy Ephraim will be throwed sky high off of his back. Kawallop. Kawallop was another one. So that's just using the ker with the wallop. So kerwallop. Carter Gospel Truth. They hit the mule, a kerwalp and a kerwarp. A rock went kersplash in the water. A hickory went kerswish. So it's just adding that beginning prefix to make all of those seem even more strong and put that emphasis on them. So kerflummox, though, to go back to that one, the dictionary didn't really, it's going to say, I see it's down below. Here it is. I was like, it didn't even tell us what that one was, and I was going to explain it, but it does have, the dictionary does have a entry for it by itself. So it's a verb, to happen with great force. So if you kerflummox. Lunsford said, this is 1975, it used to be, kerflummoxed is a homemade word to show what happened when something falls. He went over the bank, kerflummoxed. So that's a good one. Kerlorip, you can't even say that. If you hear somebody say loripin, it's usually they mean something's good. It's loripin good. But kerlorip, that was a verb phrase, to cavort. So to cavort. Some hillsmen have coined the word kerloripin. If a person goes about with no definite end in view, he is kerloripin around. I've never heard that one. That's interesting. There's some other ones we'll get to down here, is more the ones I was talking about that Pap used. But first, here's one, an interesting one, a kernel, if you've ever heard that. Well, of course, a kernel of corn. But this usage is kernel, noun, a lump or swelling node under the skin, especially an enlarged lymph node. 1974, Fink's Bits Mountain Speech, kernels equal small glands in necks, armpits, or groin. These in some game animals must be removed if the meat is to be edible. 1990, Cavender Folk Medicine, kernels equals swollen lymph nodes on the arms, in the neck, or groin. But I've even heard, not just used as in reference to lymph nodes, I've heard that too. But if you, maybe a place comes up on your arm or your back or your face or something, Pap would sometimes say it was a kernel if it felt really hard under there, like if it was sore. Often he would just call it a rising. It was a rising that had come up and it would go away. But a kernel was more like a little hard place. And so it could be in those lymph nodes, but also I've heard it referenced just maybe on your arm or on your neck or somewhere like that. Even on your head, maybe a little kernel that come up. kerosene oil is the next one, which is just kerosene, same as coal oil and lamp oil. 1936 in Swain County, North Carolina, it was documented. 1937 Hall Collection, Cades Cove, Tennessee, and they used it for a rattlesnake bite. You'll often hear old remedies in Appalachia, a lot of them that had used either coal oil or kerosene oil or lamp oil. 1984, we would put kerosene oil on a cut, and a doctor would frown pretty heavy on that today. But now I thought a lot about it. That kerosene oil offered as a disinfectant. It killed a germ, and in all probability it killed an infectious germ, and so kerosene oil was used to go on a fresh wound, pour it on there. So they were just explaining how they did it. That was 1984 from the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So here's one of those cur words that Pap used, kersplunge. It was a verb, to plunge, splash wildly. So the example they give is 1867, Harris Lovingood, kersplunge into the creek he went. So Pap might say something like, he jumped or he fell off the dock there and kersplunge, he went right in the lake. Or something that come off a waterfall, maybe a big rock, and kersplunge, it just landed there in the pool of water and splashed out everywhere. Also kersplash, that's kind of the similar one. Another one is kerwallop. It kind of mentioned that one before. So 1861, in 1938, it's just telling it was in that book, Carolina Humor. Lazy Ephraim will be throwed sky high off of his back, kerwallop. Kowallop, that was the same one we just read, so they've just got it in here twice. So 1940, Hans Hawks Dunn, he give one big jump and leapt out of all them men's hands and hit the ground, kerwallop. So again, it's just putting that emphasis on it. It reminds you though of, back there I read that it was a made up word. It reminds you of if you watched cartoons when you were little, how they would have the little words above them, you know, boom, bang, all that. It's just kind of like kerwallop, what was happening, or kersplunge when something went in the water. The next one is interesting. I'm not really familiar with it, but I really like it. It's the word kick. Of course, we all know what kick means, but it was used, the first entry in the dictionaries, it was used to reject in courtship, or jilt, if you've been jilted. So let's see, 1939, Barnett Gap, Mountains, turning a man down this way was called kicking him, and custom required that the fellow so bruised tie a handkerchief around his ankle and limp painfully away. That would be comical and awful. 1940, if you had your heart broke, I wouldn't want to tie a handkerchief and show everybody that happened to me. 1940, Oakley, Roman Reston. Well, I went home and stayed for some few weeks thinking I had better quit this courting business, as I had got kicked by my girl and I had a broken leg. So I don't think he really had a broken leg. He was just saying, I got kicked and now I'm feeling awful bad about it. So that one's interesting. I've never heard that one. 1972, Cooper, North Carolina Mountain Folklore, refusing his offer was called kicking him, and a few girls who were asked for the first time really kicked the young man's shins, but lightly, so they didn't really hurt him, they just lightly kicked him to say no. And then the second entry for kick in the dictionary is to complain, ridicule, to complain or ridicule. So 1974, Fink's Bits of Mountain Speech means to ridicule. I ain't kicking his work none. 1995, Montgomery Collection, he's always kicking about something. So I guess where we would say he's always complaining, or we would say he's always fussing or quarreling about something, but they were using the word kick in that same manner. So this next one is really interesting. It's not, I mean it is, but it's really common. It's probably one, if you know anything about Appalachian language, that you've heard. But it's funny, one of my first videos that I did, where we just all said, me and the girls and Matt kind of just said little lines of speech and talked about them, or sometimes we didn't even talk about them. I made the mistake of saying, it wasn't really a mistake, I just take for granted everyone that watches my videos is so smart that they understood exactly what I was saying, but I did not explain it very well. So I was talking about the word kilt, K-I-L-T, like it liked to have kilt me. And I said, it just means kill. It's the same word. Well, lots of people were offended by that I should have said it just means killed with the D. I figured you knew, people knew, but I should have explained it better. That was my fault. So I got a lot of comments telling me I was wrong on that one. It didn't mean kill, it meant kilt, which of course, it meant killed with the D, past tense, which of course is what I meant. I just didn't explain it very well. So kilt, you'll still hear that one sometimes. So Thornboro, Great Smoky Mountains, a party of hunters came up from Knoxville and killed them a load of bear and drug them down to the head of the creek and skinned them. So let's see, 1974, Fink's Mountain Speech, who killed that dog? So that was the usage, as I was saying, like it almost killed me, or if you don't be careful, you're going to get killed. Of course, it is the past tense, but just taking off the D and adding a T. And that's very common in Appalachian language. We add that T to a lot of words. So then another one is, let's see, to pour. Another way we use kilt, which is still probably one of the most common ways today, is to make a spring salad. So you take greens, fresh lettuce, fresh onions, and then you have either some bacon grease or some salt pork grease, some fatback grease, and you pour the grease on on the lettuce and the onions, and it kills them. It kilts. So then you've got kilt salad because it kills them, the grease does. It's what you're doing. So to pour boiling grease over wild greens in preparation for eating. Onions and pork are often added to the greens, same as wilted, some people call it wilted lettuce. And see also killed with the ED instead of the T, salad. So kilt salad, and boy, it's good. It's coming up on the time of the year when we start really looking forward to having that first mess of kilt lettuce. So the next one's kind of still on the kill, is kill dead, to kill. So again, like I was talking about a minute ago, how we really like to put emphasis. Sometimes we want to add we want you to really know it just didn't kill him, which of course infers that someone is dead. We want you to know it killed him dead. Like, I guess it almost makes you think, could you be killed halfway? You couldn't. So it just means to kill. So we use that phrase, kill dead. You're going to get killed dead. Well, how else would you get killed? You'd be dead. But that one's still very common in my area of Appalachia for sure. This other one is interesting. It's to kill down. So it was a verb phrase used to kill or to keep an animal population, to kill down. I'm not as familiar with that one. We would say, and I think the entry's actually over here, is kill out instead of kill down. So maybe the rabbits have got so bad we're going to have to kill them down. We would say you have to kill them out to save your garden if that's what you were trying to do. And then here, we'll go ahead and read that one, is kill out, to exterminate a population of plants or animals. So 1953, Hall Collection, Bryson City, North Carolina. The bear come to the settlement, come in, raiding the people's corn cribs, and after the stock, and soon killed them all out. Killed them all out. So the bear was doing the killing there, so it killed all the stock out there in Bryson City, and that was Granville Calhoun, that was a quote from him. And then 1969, Great Smoky Mountain National Park, so in the same general area. I don't know whether people killed them out or what happened to them, but a bear was just as scarce. There just wasn't any till maybe, we'll say, 4 or 5 years before the park bought the land. They began to see bear tracks back in the mountains. So he didn't know if the bear had just been killed out or if they were just scarce, which I'm sure they'd just been killed out at that time. And this is one that I like and that you'll often hear if you're familiar with Appalachian language, is people talking about their kin. So it's a noun, an individual blood relation. So also kinfolk, of course, people say that, but a lot of times you'll just hear kin, that's my kin, or are you kin? Are you kin to that Wilson that lives over there in Peachtree? So that's really still common. 1937, Hall Collection, Cades Cove, Tennessee, a kin of mine. So that was probably saying, Buddy there's a kin of mine. 1976, they was some kin. 1989, Laundry, Landry, Smoky Mountain Interviews, were a little bit of kin, but not much. So that was interesting. Sometimes you're kin, not just by blood, I would say, but by families that grew up together. Even though you're not blood related, you feel like you're kin, feel like you're family. 1991, Haynes Haywood Home. He was not really our uncle. He was no kin to us that I know of, but the young of my time were taught to address older people as uncle or aunt, whether they were any kin or not. So that was kind of what I was alluding to. But Pap told me when he was a boy that was very common to address an elder person that wasn't part of your family. You would often call them Uncle Tom or Aunt Pearl, even though they were really not your uncle or your aunt. The next entry is kind of, and that's an adverb phrase. A variant form is kinder or kindly, sometimes you'll hear, but it just means somewhat, rather to some degree. So 1904, Capehart Notebooks, he used to be bad to drink, but he's kinder, tapered off. Hall Collection, 1937, Cataloochee CCC Camp, I feel kindly tough today. So they were saying that meant sick. Tough meant sick there. It's kind of got it. 1939 Hall Collection, Gumstand, Tennessee. He kindly hid and got into some bushes. And that was George Lemons describing how his brother eluded the Confederate soldiers. Smokemont, North Carolina. Eddie Connor seems to have kindly stayed at the Enlow place. Let's skip ahead to 1956. The Hall Collection, Newport, Tennessee. My wife's kindly nervous. That was Mr. Hance. 1975, Chalmers Better. How true is the old saying in the mountains that men and dogs has it kindly easy in these here parts, but women and steers has it mighty hard. 1978, Montgomery White Pine Collection. We'd kindly get our lessons out of a spelling book. And then 1982, Maple's Memories. I don't remember whether it was at night or not, but I bet it was kindly spooky anyway. So that usage, kind of or kindly or even kinder would be not as common here for sure, but kindly and kind of would be the most common one that's still alive here today in my area of Appalachia. So you might say Tipper is kind of obsessed with talking about Appalachian language, and you would be right. I really am. I love it. It's joy. So many of the words and phrases, even the ones I don't know, I'm fascinated by, but so many of them, like the ones we've talked about today, this was especially a good area of the dictionary for me because so many of them just spoke of home, whether it was the literal landscape where I live, thinking about the Katydids, or if it was just the ones that I've heard Pap use over the years. So I am definitely kind of obsessive about Appalachian language, and I hope that you enjoy hearing me talk about it, and I hope you'll continue to drop back by often while I do celebrate Appalachia, all things, and of course a huge part of that is the Appalachian language.